Welcome to the Dating Kinky Podcast, a cast about love, sex, romance, and kink. A few days back in a local Discord server, the question came up, how do you define assertive versus aggressive? Cyan Ice asked the question, and it got me thinking. In fact, it reminded me immediately of a message in my FetLife inbox that had annoyed me. Then my mind went to a few comments over the past week or two in which people had complained of being told they were too direct or that they crossed boundaries without meaning to in their speech. Bearded Piper answered the question first with a brilliant reply, and something just clicked for me. I responded as well, then realized I had more to say. So here I am. Are you assertive? Or are you aggressive? And you can be both, of course, at different times, in different situations, with different people. But have you ever thought about the difference? What is that fine line? Well, first, let me say that in many cases, the line is not going to be hard and fast, because humans are varied and there is no one litmus test that will work for all. What one person loves and feels is assertive or dom, another will find repulsive and over-the-top aggressive. And that's okay. Not everyone is going to be a personality match. Also, how someone was raised, the culture they come from, will make a difference. So let's look at definitions first. Assertive, adjective, confident in behavior or style. Aggressive, adjective, ready and willing to fight, argue, etc., feeling or showing aggression, using forceful methods to succeed or to do something, marked by obtrusive energy and self-assertiveness. I think assertive is pretty easy to understand. And the first definition there of aggressive is recognizable. I mean, if you're ready and willing to fight or argue, then you probably know it. But that's not the line we're talking about when we're trying to nail down why something that is not overtly violent or argumentative feels aggressive. And when someone has been accused of being aggressive and they were not at all interested in fighting or arguing, it can leave them flummoxed and even the accuser at a loss to explain. So the other two definitions come into play. But even so, forceful methods? What are those? Obtrusive energy? Why can't we just speak in plain English here? Okay, can do. Assertive is being able to show confidence in yourself and advocate for what you want, while aggression is when you include others without their consent or when your relationship does not allow for that familiarity. Thanks to Bearded Piper for the foundation inspiration for that statement. Assertive respects the other person and gives them space to be and respond. Aggressive makes an assumption and takes liberties and tries to reduce, by force, the number of possible replies. Assertive behavior is respectful of boundaries, clearly delineating where you end and another person begins. Aggressive behavior ignores boundaries and tries to control others, even if only through suggestion. And the best way, in my mind, to explain this is to give examples from my own inbox from the past week. All of the aggressive options are real and coming from total strangers. I've translated them as assertive and potentially welcomed messages. Assertive. I find you interesting and would love to connect with you. Aggressive. You should have lunch with me. I should what? Who are you to say what I should or should not do? You don't know me, and you have no negotiated rights to tell me what you think I should do. Assertive. I'm looking for X, Y, and Z and would love to connect if you're interested. Aggressive. I want to be your toilet slave. In this, there is a level of intimacy implied and cavalierly assumed, and the focus is on what they want without even a nod to what I might want, which is aggressive and frankly, all too common. Assertive. I'm available on Wednesday between 3 and 5 p.m. and Thursday between noon and 7 p.m. Aggressive. If you don't want to miss out, you'll make time for me. It's grandiose and over the top. It suggests someone who feels a need to move things along way too fast and is willing to manufacture pressure to force another's hand. Something to note here is that assertive is usually the more vulnerable way of speaking. It is very I-focused and allows for rejection or negative response as easily as acceptance or positive response. And that's why so many people who aren't even normally what you might consider aggressive in the ready and willing to fight or argue way, are often aggressive in their speech patterns or in certain situations where it's unwarranted and unwelcome, because they're afraid of rejection, of being vulnerable. Let's look at my first example again with a few additions and notes, including a non-personal example of business use to make things clearer. Assertive. I find you interesting and would love to connect with you. Aggressive. We should have lunch. Very aggressive. You should have lunch with me. I find you interesting and would love to connect with you is oriented around the self, while also acknowledging that the other person has agency. It does not assume connection or familiarity. This is perfect for strangers expressing an interest, business colleagues, and casual acquaintances. We should have lunch is more familiar. This assumes that you both have enough history together to be able to know that having lunch will end in a positive result, and that you both should do it for good things to happen. In a business situation, this is best used in a conversation where discussion has already moved to having further discussion, and the circumstances would not seem weird to make for a more casual lunch meeting rather than a formal business appointment. You should have lunch with me is practically a command. It is leaving very little room for a polite demurral, instead almost requiring a hard rejection, which is difficult for many. It's putting the receiver in the vulnerable position while claiming power for the person making the statement. In a business situation, this is clearly a superior speaking to someone who has less power in at least one area, and there is subtle threat in the language. And while many people associate aggressive behavior with masculine presenting folks, let me state clearly, they do not hold the exclusive rights. Many people are aggressive. Declarative, assumptive statements are aggressive as well. You should. Of course we will. Assumes that you both will. When we do XYZ, assumes that you will do XYZ. Even questions. When will you ask me out? Can be aggressive and assume that the asking out is a done deal. So when is aggression not just okay, but desirable? When it's a negotiated part of a relationship or appropriate to the level of intimacy. However, if you don't know for sure, it's usually best to fall back on assertive. It's not only safe, it's incredibly attractive to most people because it shows confidence not only in yourself and your ability to be vulnerable and open to any results, but in the situation. When you have an aggression problem, if people tell you that you're too direct, that your words cross their boundaries, that you have violated their consent, or you find yourself getting ghosted often in conversations, you might be aggressive in your communication. Do you have to do anything about it? No, of course not. You're an adult and you can do what you want. However, you might want to consider if this is the case, because you could be turning people off by using aggressive language that you don't really actually mean. And that is kind of the suck. What are your thoughts? How do you feel when someone is aggressive towards you outside of the appropriate relationship? Do you get aggressive in return? Do you shut down? Do you feel like speaking up makes you vulnerable and impolite? Have you been aggressive towards others unintentionally? How so? Thank you for joining me today. If you loved this episode, please share it with others who would enjoy it. And please do join me at datingkinky.com and on our new apps available in the Google Play and Apple App Stores. We're built by Kinksters, for Kinksters, poly, queer, trans folk, and anyone not quite vanilla, and we're free. Find me on FetLife as Nookie Notes, and on Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, Facebook, and Medium as Dating Kinky. We're on Instagram as Dating Kinky Official, all one word. Have a kinky day, and I'll catch you next episode.